All right. So let's dive into something, I think we've all pondered, like, at some point,
Yeah.
the whole idea of the ideal breast size. Like,
hmm
is it all about what we see in the media, or is there, like, something more nuanced going on?
Yeah.
We're going to kind of unpack this today. Using data, we've got survey data from 1,000 Americans
Okay.
and another 1,000 Europeans to see how, how perceptions of ideal breast size kind of stack up against what's actually out there.
So we're talking perceptions versus reality, and that's what is so interesting about these sources. They give us this opportunity to compare and contrast not only what people say they find ideal,
Right.
but also how that actually relates to what we see in the real world in terms of the average breast size.
Yeah, we're not just talking about like this abstract, ideal. We're actually going to ground it in like real world data.
Exactly.
Love it.
Are
Yeah.
you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Small drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
Okay, so tell me, what was the most unexpected thing you came across in all this data?
Well, I mean, if you think about the media and how it often, seems to relentlessly focus on larger breasts, it was surprising to see that that a majority of both men and women
Okay.
actually reported that an average breast size was like their ideal.
Okay, that is counterintuitive for sure. Over 60% of women
Yes.
and nearly 54% of men.
Right.
I mean, makes you wonder what's driving those preferences,
Yeah, for sure. It could be, comfort. It could be practicality plays a role, maybe a larger role than we would initially think.
Yeah.
I mean, think about, larger breasts, and it could be discomfort or back pain.
Mm-hmm.
Could even, it affects things like clothing choices and exercise.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, and then the other thing is like the cost factor.
Oh, yeah.
Larger bras
That's a good point. Yeah.
tend to be, more expensive. So maybe it's not just the look, the aesthetics of it all,
hmm
but also this whole range of practical considerations that people are factoring in.
Exactly.
Okay, so when we talk about this average size
Hmm.
that people seem to prefer, what are we actually talking about cup size wise?
Right. So getting specific, getting down to it.
Yeah, yeah,
What did the data reveal?
yeah.
Well, it was interesting. We saw a pretty clear preference for a C cup
Okay.
as like the ideal size.
Among both men and women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Among both. But it is, it is worth noting that a good percentage of women, about 26%, actually also favored a B cup.
Okay.
And then very few opted for an A.
So there's like some variation within that average, range.
Right.
But C cup seems to be kind of the sweet spot for most people. What about any differences in those preferences between men and women? Like, is everybody truly on the same page here?
Well, for the most part, yeah, it's kind of remarkable how aligned the genders were on this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is quite interesting. But we did see a slightly higher percentage of men who expressed a preference for D and DD cups
Oh, interesting.
compared to women.
So there is that slight difference there.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what, cultural or societal factors might be, at play there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've established, there is this like general preference for an average breast size, kind of centered around that, C cup. But does that hold true across different countries?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we see like variations, in preferences based on location?
That's where things start to get really interesting, I think.
Okay.
So we found that in a lot of European countries like UK, Spain, Austria, Portugal,
Mm-hmm.
the C cup remained like the dominant preference.
Okay.
But then there were a couple of outliers. Poland and Hungary stood out,
Yeah.
with a clear majority actually favoring a B cup.
So it's like a B cup appreciation society. I love it.
Yeah.
But hold on. You mentioned something earlier about some European countries being like the leaders in breast augmentation procedures.
Yes.
I'm having a little trouble squaring that with this whole, preference for average or even like smaller sizes.
You're right to point that out. It is kind of a paradox.
It is.
Germany, France, and Italy, they're actually the top 3 countries in Europe for breast augmentation.
Wow.
Even though in their surveys, they stated a preference for C cups.
That's a fascinating discrepancy.
Yeah.
So what do you think could be driving that? Is it just like the media influence, or are there deeper cultural factors, that could maybe explain this disconnect between what people say they prefer and what they're actually, doing?
That's a great question. I think to really get to the bottom of it, we'd have to, really delve into the cultural nuances of each region. It could be a bunch of factors. The media, pornography, they often portray, those larger breast sizes as the ideal. Mm-hmm. And then there could be some cultural factors that might, some cultures might value a more voluptuous figure.
Okay.
And even economic disparity could come into play. Access to these cosmetic procedures.
Right.
Might be more common in certain countries.
It's a complex, issue for sure. All right, so let's kind of switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about how those ideals stack up against the actual average breast sizes in different countries. Mm. Does reality actually match up with that perceived ideal?
Not always, no.
Yeah.
So a lot of European countries share that C cup preference.
Right.
But it's only women in the UK, France, and Poland who actually have an average breast size of a C cup.
So they're living the dream, at least size-wise. What about those countries with that B cup preference, like Poland and Hungary? Do they have?
Yeah.
Do they also have an average B cup size?
Actually, no. Hungary has the smallest average, and it comes in at an A cup.
Oh, wow.
And Romania actually boasts the largest average at a D cup.
Oh, interesting.
And it's interesting, too, that Germany, Spain, and Italy all average a B cup, even though there's that preference for C cups.
So it's almost like in a lot of cases, people seem to, want breasts that are one size larger than their national average. Huh. That's really thought-provoking. Okay, I'm curious to hear more about those exceptions you mentioned, like the UK, Belgium, and France, where that average C cup actually aligns with what people say they want. Is there something unique about these countries that makes people more content with the average breast size?
It's hard to say for certain, without really diving into those cultures specifically. But
yeah.
But it is an interesting question to think about.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some some unique cultural influences or historical factors at play. Mm-hmm. Or perhaps their media portrays beauty in a more diverse way.
Interesting.
It's definitely an area that warrants further investigation.
Totally.
But moving on, let's shift our focus a little bit from societal ideals to the individual perceptions. So, despite that gap between the ideal and the average that we've been talking about, the data showed that there were surprisingly high satisfaction rates, across both the U.S. and Europe.
Okay, that's heartening to hear. Even with all this pressure to conform to certain beauty standards,
right? It
seems like people are generally content with what they have.
Yeah, I mean, over 74% of American women and 76% of UK women with C cups said they were happy with their size. So that suggests that maybe ultimately personal comfort and self-acceptance might actually outweigh those external pressures.
I wonder though, is that satisfaction like evenly distributed? Are there any groups or specific breast sizes where we see like a dip in that contentment.
Yeah, you raise a good point. So while the overall satisfaction rates are really encouraging, we do see those spikes in dissatisfaction at those extreme ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
So in the UK, it was women with A cups who reported, much lower satisfaction, whereas in the US, it was women with DDD cups.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it seems like feeling like an outlier, whether you're on the smaller end or the larger end,
Right.
it can really, kind of mess with your body image a little bit.
Exactly. It speaks to that human desire to feel like you belong, to feel a sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
And this actually kind of ties into a trend we're seeing with, some celebrities who are reversing breast augmentations.
Oh, okay.
Which could suggest maybe a shift in those beauty standards, right? With more of an emphasis on body positivity and embracing those natural variations that we see.
It's refreshing to see that shift happening,
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier the importance of partners' perceptions. Like, how do they play into this whole equation?
Yeah, partner dynamics are definitely a really important piece of the puzzle here. And what our data showed was that nearly 70% of partners, said that they were happy with their partner's breast size.
Oh, okay.
So this idea of, mutual acceptance and appreciation can really boost confidence for both parties involved.
It's a good reminder that feeling, desired, feeling accepted by your partner can really like have a big impact on body image, right?
Yeah.
It goes way beyond just meeting some, like abstract societal standard.
Yeah, absolutely. It really reinforces that idea that, beauty is subjective. It's deeply personal. Ultimately, those individual preferences and the quality of our relationships hold more weight than any external pressure to conform.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From ideal versus average to geographical differences, individual satisfaction levels.
Yeah.
What would you say are the key takeaways from all of this? Like, what does it all mean in the grand scheme of things?
I think the big takeaway, the overarching takeaway, is that ideal breast size isn't about chasing some, arbitrary standard that's dictated by society or the media.
Right.
It's really about personal comfort, self-acceptance, and feeling confident in your own skin.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about embracing, your individuality and celebrating the diversity of human bodies.
Exactly. And as we discussed, there does seem to be this growing movement towards body positivity, which is really encouraging.
Yeah.
But it does raise an important question. As those beauty standards continue to evolve,
right?
Are we going to see, an even greater emphasis on accepting natural variations when it comes to breast size?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? Like, will this shift in attitudes actually translate into tangible changes in behavior and choices?
Right.
For example, could we see like a decrease in breast augmentation procedures as body positivity becomes more mainstream?
That's fascinating to consider.
Yeah.
Of course, the motivations for seeking augmentation are complex and varied.
Yeah.
Some might still desire enhancement, regardless of what's going on with societal pressures. It's really a tapestry of individual, desires that are kind of intertwined with these cultural influences.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, how much of our self-perception is really, truly our own, versus being shaped by the media, by these messages that we're just, like, constantly bombarded with.
Yeah.
Do we ever really escape those those external pressures?
It's a constant negotiation for sure. But just engaging in these conversations, challenging that status quo and promoting these diverse representations of beauty. I think that's a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. It's all about like expanding that, definition of what's considered beautiful and creating a more inclusive and accepting society. It feels like we've only scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
There's so much more to uncover about, like the historical evolution of beauty standards, the psychology behind body image, the way that media representation and self-perception kind of like play off of each other.
It really is it's multifaceted.
Yeah.
It reminds us that data can only tell us so much.
Okay.
We really have to think about those cultural, those historical, those psychological contexts. We want to get a deeper understanding of all this.
Totally. Data gives us a snapshot.
Yeah.
But it's those deeper layers of analysis that really bring, the story to life.
Right.
If we could go back in time and look at data from, I don't know, like 50 or 100 years ago,
right,
I bet we'd see some pretty crazy shifts in what was perceived as the ideal breast size.
Oh, undoubtedly.
Right.
Imagine comparing data from, the Victorian era with its emphasis on corseted waists and a more modest bust to the flapper era. You know, the 1920s, where a flatter chest was all the rage.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you how fluid these ideals are and how much they depend on the context.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that what we think of as beautiful is constantly changing. It's shaped by, those societal norms, cultural trends, even like technological advancements, right? I mean, think about how the invention of the push-up bra, for instance, probably had a huge impact on the way people viewed breast size.
Absolutely. I mean, technology intersects with our beauty standards, right?
Yeah.
It influences them. And it makes you wonder, as we look ahead to these new technologies that are emerging, like virtual reality,
right,
augmented reality. I mean, they really blur the lines between who we are physically and our, digital representations. So, could we see a future where people are customizing their avatars to like embody their ideal body image?
It's a mind-blowing thought.
Yes.
The potential for both liberation and like further distortion of self-perception is huge.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to something you said earlier.
Okay.
About the limitations of data.
Yeah.
While statistics can show us these interesting trends and patterns, they can't really capture like the emotional nuances of body image and self-esteem.
That's right. Numbers, they can tell us what people say they prefer, but they don't tell us the whole story, right?
Yeah.
They don't tell us about the lived experiences of people who are trying to navigate these pressures.
Right.
There are so many personal stories and insecurities and triumphs that go beyond what we can see in data analysis.
It just underscores, like the importance of empathy and understanding. Each person's journey with body image is their own.
Right.
And we need to approach these conversations, with sensitivity and respect.
I couldn't agree more. It's about creating spaces where people feel comfortable sharing their experiences, celebrating who they are, and challenging these unrealistic beauty standards that can be so damaging.
Well said. Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of ideal breast size, what's the one key message you hope our listener takes away from all of this?
If I could leave our listener with one thought, it would be this: embrace your embrace your uniqueness. Celebrate the body that you have.
Yeah.
Don't let those external pressures tell you what you're worth. True beauty comes from, self-acceptance.
Love it.
And embracing the diversity of human forms.
Perfectly put. It's about tuning out that noise.
Yeah.
The noise of societal expectations.
Yeah.
And focusing on what makes you feel confident and comfortable, in your own skin. And remember, this conversation doesn't end here.
Well,
we want you to keep exploring and questioning and challenging those norms that try to define beauty for us. Because at the end of the day, the power to define what's beautiful, it lies within each of us.
Absolutely. Keep questioning, keep exploring.
Yeah.
And keep celebrating that magnificent diversity of the human experience.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey.
Yeah.
Until next time, stay curious.